reflective surface, a ballerina, a balloon dog, Easter eggs, tulips. What is behind this?
You know, I believe that I love reflection out of a basis of philosophy. And when I became involved with philosophy, reading Kierkegaard and Sartre and Nietzsche and Hegel, I would always be coming across the word reflection. And I think I got pulled into reflection through philosophy. And I think it's a symbol of contemplation and at the same time of the enlightenment of the senses.
And so everything has this in common for you: the ballerina, the balloon dog, this power of reflection.
Well, the power of reflection, and when you look at a reflection and you see yourself, it's a form of affirmation. Now, I'm not talking about affirmation like narcissism of seeing one's own reflection, but it informs you that you're here right now. It's right at this moment. And at the same time, when you go into abstraction, then you go into the metaphysical, you go into dealing with the past or dealing with the future. So things become metaphysical through the reflection.
Excellent. And you know, you have been exposing different artworks in different parts of the world. What is the attitude that you find, you know, towards your work in different parts of the world? It is the same? Can you see different attitudes of different people in different countries?
Yeah. You know, what's wonderful about art is that at the end of the day, it's metaphor for people. And it's a vehicle that lets you learn how to trust in yourself and then trust in others. And it's acceptance and trusting. So for me, it's very universal. People are interested in reaching their own potential, and they want to see their community also reach its potential. And artists are just dealing with objects and images as a metaphor for all of us to reach our potential.
Excellent. And let me ask you, you have your studio in New York, West 29th Street,
Mm-hmm.
no?
Mm-hmm.
You have a lot of people working there.
Mm-hmm.
How is to work with a team? You know, it's like a new way of art in the world, no? How is working with a team of people that at the same time is doing art for you and for your collectors?
Mm-hmm. The people that work for me, my assistants, are always just following my direction.
Okay.
And so it's a little bit like a conductor of an orchestra. So you have individual musicians that are there, but they're following a certain direction that conductor is really emphasizing to them. And so I create systems all the time so that everything is a reflection to my vision, that everything is as specific as possible, that each gesture is just an extension of my own kind of hand. Okay. And that's my responsibility. They're artisans that work for me. When they go home, they make their own works, but when they're in the studio, they're only making works under my direction. The reason I also have people, I don't want to be in a room by myself all the time. I mean, not for a lifetime. I enjoy people. I enjoy interacting with people. I enjoy the stimulation of others. I like to challenge myself and to challenge others. And you know, the last place I would want to be is a room by myself all the time.
Okay. Talking about inspiration and work with others, what is your role model in life? And I had always a question regarding this. If this role model has a relationship with Popeye or not?
I, Popeye the Sailor Man. I am what I am, and that's all what I am.
You know, when I think of Popeye, I think
Yes.
of my father.
Mm.
And I learned aesthetics through my father, and I think my father was always very, very generous to me and very guiding and supportive. And I think of Popeye being my father's generation. But if I look past my biological parents, my immediate family, you know, Picasso and Duchamp and Manet, These all feel like family figures. Velasquez, you know, it's all a family, and that's a reality. And when you make these different types of connections, it's just the way our genes and DNA are interconnected within our biological history. We also have kind of an intellectual history that's as real, and I think is changing. I think it eventually does change our biological selves, our genes and our DNA, at least as a temporary effect on them.
Talking about Picasso and all these masters, tell me about your story with Salvador Dali. I know that you met Dali, is that
Yes,
right?
that's right. You know, my mother informed me when I was about 18 years of age that Dali spent half his time in New York. And so I was going to Maryland Institute College of Art, and I called him up. I told him that I was a young artist, that I always liked his work and I would love to meet him. He told me if I would come to New York that weekend, meet him in the lobby of the St. Regis Hotel at noon, you know, he'd meet me. And I went, and sure enough, right at noon he came down. He had on a big buffalo fur cape,
Amazing.
and a diamond tie clip, and his mustache was up, you know. And he was fantastic. He was so generous with his time, just as far as greeting me. He invited me to go see an exhibition he had at the Knoedler Gallery. And at that time, he just was working with holograms with Alice Cooper. And it was to see this work. And I went there, saw him at the gallery. He posed for some photos. And he really was just generous, that I felt like just this kid from Pennsylvania, that I could do this too. You know, I could make art a way of life. I could be participating in a dialogue with, you know, my peers and other people, that I could do this, I could do it too. And so I'm always grateful for that generosity.
That encounter has influence when you start to work with ready-made objects like the vacuum cleaners. Can you tell us about this stage in your life?
I was always a painter.
Okay.
And I went also to the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, and I studied with Ed Paschke. And Ed Paschke and his peers, Jim Nutt, the Chicago Imagists, they used everyday life. They would see images in tattoo parlors, or they would see naive art that they would find inspiring. So I really learned about the ready-made object through the artists in Chicago. And then as I started to become more interested in the ready-made, and that everything's already here, we're surrounded by everything, then I started to really look at Duchamp more closely. And through looking at Duchamp and then wanting to contribute something. And I think my first contribution was when I did the New, and I started to make something that's quite ethereal and very ephemeral, the idea of newness, to start to make that very, very visible, and to show it as an ultimate state of being, to present it as an ideal state, one form of definition of the eternal.
And talking about different stages in your life, what do you consider that is your finest work? The best work? The ballerina?
My family, you know, my family.
Excellent.
But because in the long run, I think everything we do in life, we want to do to enrich our parameters, to make our, to live to our potential, and then to be a role model to your family, and then outside that to your community. And I hope that the seated ballerina is a symbol of my morality, a sense that my responsibility to a community, to the best of my ability to communicate what I think can help make life be as vast and as enriching, and a way to live morally within our, you know, kind of family life and communal life.
And talking about family as well, as every human being, you have ups and downs, you know, in life. I remember when you got divorced, and there was I read that you destroyed after the divorce several of your artwork. You know, can you tell me a little bit about that?
It wasn't after the divorce, it was
Yeah.
during the custody proceedings.
Okay.
And it was just that my work was being presented in the same light as some of the work that my ex-wife had done. And,
Okay.
you know, I regret destroying some of those works.
Yeah.
I mean, I think some of my paintings and sculptures from the Made in Heaven series are, you know, fantastic works. But it was something that I did at the time.
And what is the message from you to the young artists?
Really want to participate. There is always an audience there for you because people are always, you know, they need somebody to be out there on the front line. So I think really to participate and to just give everything, you know, all you have, but to trust in yourself. You know, there's nothing magical about making a great work of art or making any accomplishment in life, because the only thing any individual can do, whether you're a physicist or a doctor or an artist, a mathematician, is to follow your interests. And the more you follow your interests and focus on those interests, it takes you to a very metaphysical place. And that's where time and space bend, and you connect with the universal. You connect with the archetypal. And that's all you can do. That's where you find art.
Excellent. What is your favorite book right now?
Well,
three of them or four of them.
Well, I always enjoy rereading Birth of Tragedy
Okay.
by Nietzsche and Hegel. I'm reading on reflection right now because I'm going back and looking at that. I just read the Outliers, which is fantastic. I enjoy that. The Picasso books by Sir John Richardson. I'm always looking at those books. Letters by Manet. Manet's Letters. It's a fantastic little book.
So excellent. And tell me about the ballerina. You know, we're in Buenos Aires, in Argentina, at the Malva, one of the best museums in Latin America. Can you tell me a little bit about the ballerina and how do you conceive the ballerina? What is the concept behind the ballerina?
The ballerina comes from a series called Antiquity. So there's a reference, she's like a contemporary Aphrodite, so a very feminine form. If you look at her kind of tutu going around, it's very feminine in its form. There's a beautiful gradations, the way the colors applied to the sculpture, the same as like a small original porcelain would have the gradations. And if you look at it, I hope that you just feel kind of a suspension of disbelief just in the beauty of it, where the simple and the Baroque really have come together, and that you can get in essence that it in a way came from humble origins, but at the same time has been enlightened to a higher state. And it's a metaphor for us because, you know, we can achieve these goals ourselves.
Well, that sounds beautiful. And well, my last question would be, you know, when I was in Qatar, I was there during the conference. You were there as a speaker, and I remember you were talking a lot about vision in life.
My father was an interior decorator, and so I would watch my father work. And he would start with some graph paper, and he would lay out, you know, a home. Here's the living room, here's a bedroom. And he would figure out in advance where every piece of furniture would go, and he would draw it there. Nothing was left to speculation that all of a sudden the furniture would be delivered to your home and a lamp is too big or a couch is too small. And so I really learned vision from my father. And my father was a perfectionist. I mean, the reason he was a perfectionist was he had vision. Mm-hmm. And if you have vision, you know what you're looking for. And so it's really just a way of setting out and really trying to be precise and being clear about what you're trying to do. And if you can do that, if you have that vision, to achieve that, it's nothing. You can, as long as you have the vision, you can achieve anything.
And what about risk? You were something in your life that kept my attention always. You work at Wall Street. as a broker?
I was always an artist. So
Okay.
I was always an artist,
Artist.
but I grew up to be self-reliant, and I would go door to door selling gift wrapping paper
Excellent.
and chocolate. So I learned to enjoy interacting with people. My family, my aunts, uncles, my grandparents, they all enjoyed being with people and interacting. Many of them were merchants. So I enjoyed that interaction. One of the reasons I love the art world is because it's the engagement with people. I mean, it's wonderful to make objects, but it's not about the objects. The objects are something that can stimulate people that they can come into contact with art, which is their own excitement, their own sense of perception, central perception, but also intellectual development. And that's really what's beautiful at the core of art.
I know, Jeff, that you have little time because you have a lot of other meetings. Thank you for your humility. Thank you for your time.
Pleasure.